often when I'm talking to somebody, I will just forget what I'm saying and just stop sort of mid-sentence. And the other day in the kitchen, I caught myself just standing there and sort of staring around the kitchen. I had no idea what I'd been doing. It took quite a few minutes for me to realize that I'd been like washing the dishes and stuff. I do feel quite a great sense of loss from who I used to be because I'm not that person anymore.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to the Recovery After Stroke podcast. First, a quick book update. Well, my book, The Unexpected Way That Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened, is not live yet. It has been uploaded to the distributor, but we can't see the listing on Amazon as yet. This process takes way longer than I could ever possibly have imagined, and we should be very close, and I will make sure to let everyone know when it is live. In the meantime, if you still want to grab the first chapter of the book free, just go to recoveryafterstroke.com/book. Fill out your details and a PDF of the free chapter will be sent to you in your email. Thank you to everyone who has already left a review on Spotify and on iTunes. They are starting to go up and there's quite a lot of reviews now. I really, really appreciate it. So recently what I've noticed is there's been a ton of people contact me and let me know that they just found the podcast and it has changed their life for the better. Rachel, in this particular interview, who I'll introduce in a moment, even talks about how the podcast has made a difference to her stroke recovery. And that's why the reviews are important, because the more people that leave a review, the more reasons Spotify and iTunes have to present the podcast as an option for listening. And that just helps stroke survivors. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about us helping each other to navigate this thing that we have to deal with now. So I really appreciate all of the reviews. If you haven't left a review and you'd love to, and you want to make a difference to somebody just by simply leaving a review and doing nothing else, just go to Spotify or iTunes and leave a comment a little bit about what the show means to you. Leave a 5-star review, and that's it. Job done. Thank you so much. It'll only take a few minutes. I really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below the video. I love seeing them. I respond to them, and also like the video and hit the notifications bell and subscribe to the show. And again, we're seeing real good growth in the numbers, both in YouTube and on the Spotify and iTunes. And I'll be releasing the numbers at the end of the year, the numbers of how well the podcast has done this year compared to all the other years that it has existed. So it's amazing what has happened in the last 12 months compared to the first 5 years, the first more than 5 years of this podcast. It's absolutely amazing what is happening. And I'll share that in a future episode when I've got the final numbers for the last 12 months. This is episode 279, and my guest today is Rachel McLaughlin, who experienced a transient ischemic attack, also referred to as a TIA, when she was aged 44, which has led to a loss of identity, amongst other things. Rachel McLaughlin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I have a little trauma that I need to tell you about. It's not your fault, but I used to have a Mr. McLaughlin who was a primary school principal who was tough as tough can be. And I'm pretty sure he gave me, back in the day, corporal punishment. He gave me the strap on the hand for misbehaving. And I think the name was also a name that I used to hear at high school. So nothing personal, just wanted to mention that and get it off my chest. Thanks for joining me on the podcast, though.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
So at the end of May this year, I experienced a transient ischemic attack. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up and woke my husband up and said, I think I'm having a heart attack. So we I didn't really know what to do. I hadn't been feeling unwell or anything previously. So I rang Healthline, and they were like, we're putting you through to the ambulance now. And I ended up in hospital. I was in ED for a few hours till the early hours of the morning, and then transferred up to eventually, actually later on that day, up to the neurology ward. I stayed in for a couple of nights, and then I got sent home. And they said to come back on the Monday morning. So basically, there was not going to be anybody around over the weekend that would be able to sort of help or deal with anything. So I got sent home. I went back Monday morning. Nobody knew who I was or why I was there. Spent another sort of 24 hours there, and they were like, look, we really don't know what's going on. We're just going to send you home, and if you have any more issues, just come straight back in, tell them what's been happening. So I was when I woke up with the pain, when I first went into ED, sorry, these keep falling out. I had a really sharp pain in my right side of my chest, and then a bit of pain down my right arm. And I had a bit of numbness and tingling, but that was about it. And by the time the ambulance got to me, it had sort of all passed, but they took me in anyway. I didn't actually find out for quite a while that I'd had a stroke. And so I sort of ended up getting sent home, told that I would be fine and I could just carry on with life as normal. I said to the doctor that was discharging me on the second time I'd been into hospital that I really didn't feel comfortable just being sent home because I didn't know what was going on, and I had sort of quite an intense fear that it was going to happen again. And they told me that I'd be fine to go back to work. And I said, I work at a special needs school. It's a very intense environment, and I do not feel comfortable going back to school at the moment. So he gave me a certificate for a month's leave, and then I was at home trying to cope with whatever this was. And it's been a really interesting journey. And I'm
Tell me about it. Oh my gosh. So
yes.
what symptoms did you present with?
When they took me in, it was simply just the pain that I'd had in the side of the chest. So it felt like there was a balloon or something in there, and it had just sort of like popped, and it was a really sharp sort of sudden pain, and the pain down my arm, and that was it. Yeah. But because I had been asleep, there could have been other things going on. I just wasn't aware of them.
So when you went to the hospital with a TIA, and they gave you the TIA diagnosis, they were the only two symptoms that you went to?
They were the only symptoms, but they did do a lot of testing when I was in there, so MRIs, CTs. So it turns out that I have actually had quite a few mini strokes in the past. They don't know when I've had them or why I've had them, and they've obviously never affected me to the point where I'm unable to work or hasn't affected my speech or anything like that.
So is that obvious on a brain scan? Could they see that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of scary in itself, knowing
Yeah.
that those have been going on, and I haven't been able to, that I just didn't even know that they were happening.
Yeah, that is interesting. So there's an underlying cause. Has there been any type of information to say we think it might be this, or?
So with all the tests and scans and stuff that they did, they also, well, again, this was quite, this went on for a while. They found a hole in my heart, or they thought they'd found a hole in my heart. But then they said, no, it wasn't. Then I was catching up with my GP and he was like, yeah, no, you've definitely got a hole in your heart. And I was like, but no, but they said I didn't have one. And he's like, oh, no, you definitely have. So about a month ago, I had, what's it called, a transesophageal thing where they pop a wee camera thing down your throat to have a look at that where the hole is. And I'm yet to see the cardiologist to organise when that might be fixed. And when they did that procedure, the cardiologist came to see me afterwards, but I was really out of it and couldn't wake up. And so all I know is that the size of the hole, they believe that it's worth fixing. So, but I don't know when that will happen.
Okay, this is in New Zealand, yeah?
Yeah.
So there wasn't anything in hindsight now that you recall that you might say, oh, maybe that was a mini stroke? Did you have no clue whatsoever over the years?
So now that I look back on it, I remember I was driving a couple of years ago. I used to, during the week, I used to work at a school about an hour's drive from Christchurch. And I used to come back to Christchurch in the weekend. And I remember I was driving back one afternoon and I had to pull over because I had this really sort of sharp pain in my chest. I don't remember whether it was the side or whereabouts it was. And I did have pain down my arm, like quite severe pain. So I pulled off to the side of the road and it passed. Nothing came of it. There were no other signs. And I just carried on.
Yeah.
But that would have been a good couple of years ago that happened. So I mean, there's quite a bit going on. Or at that time, there was quite a bit going on. My dad's been really unwell. He had sepsis at the time and was also in hospital. We were both in hospital at the same time, and we actually thought he was going to die. But anyway, I sort of said to the doctor when I saw them, I was like, oh, can stress cause stroke? And he said, stress doesn't cause the stroke. He said it will exacerbate underlying symptoms, but it doesn't cause it. But they did find out also that my blood pressure was extremely high. It was 220/200 when the ambulance picked me up. So,
well done, Rachel. That's well done that you're still here and telling me that
I know.
occurred. My gosh.
Yeah. The ambulance people were just like, how are you actually still
managing?
Yeah.
Do you notice
pretty
that
much.
it's high? Do you have any type of feeling that something's going on?
No, the doctors sort of said, again, this would be a good 2 years ago, that my blood pressure was a wee bit high, but it was only it was 150-ish, sort of. It wasn't, but they were going to keep an eye on it. And then, nothing ever came of that. So
okay,
I just carried on.
And now when you left hospital, did you leave with any stroke-related deficits that you have to overcome?
So when I left, I was obviously very tired, and they were like, that's really normal. But you're walking, you're talking, you're absolutely fine. You'll be okay. And I was like, okay, great. So I'll recover and I'll just carry on. So I ended up eventually coming back to work. So my school job, I'd gone down to 3 days just before the stroke happened. And then the other 2 or 3 days a week, I was helping a friend at their dance studio, just doing sort of admin and bits and pieces. And so I went back to the studio job, which sort of was spread out, and then just 1 day at school. And then a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't coping at all well with anything. And I've realized in the last little while that my cognitive function is quite severely impaired, in terms of just not being able to get through things. I can't process quickly. I get tired. My brain sort of kind of I hit the wall is the best way to describe it, and I just stop and I can't keep going.
You hit the wall compared to previously, because you've hit the wall before. Say you hit the wall at 9:30 p.m. after going all day, not eating, not resting, blah blah blah. What's it like now? How soon do you hit the wall?
After a day at school, usually, I don't do a full day at school. I usually leave between 1 and 2 o'clock because it's quite a drive from where I live. And usually when I get home, that's me for the rest of the day and night. This last week, Wednesday was a really good day. It was my school day and I was still going after school, but I think that's because I've stopped the other job at the moment. And so at the moment, it's just that one day and I sort of feel like I can cope. I get really, really bad headaches and really severe nausea still. And that's often what can keep me in bed for the day. And most days, I do have to have a rest around about sort of 1 or 2 o'clock. Like I actually have to go to bed, shut the curtains. So like intense light really bothers me. And that is actually something that I did talk to the doctors about before my stroke. I was struggling a little bit with sort of light sensitivity, and like on a computer, like for too long, that was bothering me. So I think perhaps there were underlying things going on, but I just sort of passed them off, and they sort of were manageable, I guess.
Light sensitivity is a big deal, and so is computer screens, and people pass it off as my eyes are tired, or been working too much, or focusing, or I need glasses. All those types of things, they're all legitimate, but sometimes they do mask the fact that the brightness and the type of light that comes out of screens, and then fluorescent lighting that comes out of those long fluorescent light bulbs.
Yes.
The wavelength is too difficult for a neurologically impaired brain to deal with. And I remember when I was working in an office for a little while after I became unwell, I was wearing my sunglasses inside, in front of the monitor. And it was helping, because without it, I couldn't stare at the light. It was just too much. And there's one monitor on your left and one monitor on the right in these offices these days. And it was just a really big deal. So today, it still bothers me. I've got a light at the top of my monitor to my right. I've got a light on my left for the camera. I've got three monitors in front of me. And I often finish these episodes with, pain or something. I don't know if it's even pain, but it's just general fatigue of my brain from that 1 hour or 2 hour stint in front of the computer. And at home on purpose, in order to decrease the impact that light has on my brain. At night, we don't have lights on above the head. We have lamps with warm, yellowish kind of lights that are just sitting in the corner and light up the general area, but don't light up my brain.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Yeah, I've got a lamp beside my bed, and we have a lamp in the corner of the sort of lounge room where the TV is. And yeah, I often turn the main light off to put that on. Just find it easier.
Yeah, it helps to calm.
Yeah, and I wear sunglasses pretty much all the time now, especially when I'm driving. Driving, I find incredibly difficult. That would be one of my big things.
Which part?
Well, initially it was actually changing gears. So I have a manual, and it took me quite a while to be comfortable with that again. And then it's just, I think it's the overstimulation of all the other traffic around me, and having, I'm in my car and I've got to be aware of everything. So the other day when my mum came in, she actually did the driving and took me around so I could do all my stuff. And it was really nice because I didn't sort of feel that tiredness and that overwhelm after a day of, or not a day, an outing. So I've realized that the driving is actually a big part of why I get tired. And I think the concentration. So the place that I used to work at, that's actually where my mum lives, over in Akaroa. And I can't do the drive over there now. In the last school holidays, I went over, and I was down for about 3 or 4 days because it was just too much.
I know how you feel. Outside of after brain surgery, I went to travel to see a friend of mine who was about 3 or 4 hours away from where I live, and the whole intention was to go there and do a bit of a project that we were collaborating on together. But I said to him, I can't come out there and just sit there for this project, record what we had to record, and then go home. I'm going to have to stay at your place, which he was very comfortable for me to do. But it was such a big deal to be there and have to stay there, and not be able to just drive home. It was completely unlike the me of the past. And I know a lot of stroke survivors will relate to what you said about all of the concentration, all the things flowing by, making sure that you're driving safely and doing all the regular things that you wouldn't have to think of, changing gear. Now you've got to think about everything. And my left leg is the one that is affected. So now I can't really drive. I can drive manual or stick shift, as some people call it, but I can't feel the pedal. And sometimes I forget that my leg is on the brake, and instead of changing gear, I brake at the time when I'm supposed to be hitting the clutch. And it's just crazy. It's ridiculous. It's unsafe. So I made sure that I didn't have a manual car. But a couple of times when we've been on trips and we've tried to hire a car to drive around, there's not an automatic car available, and they make you hire a manual,
manual.
not
Yeah.
understanding that it's
Yeah.
almost impossible to use.
Mm.
And that's a problem. And in order to drive a manual, I have to drive barefoot so that I can
Yeah.
actually physically feel the pedal under my leg.
Yeah.
And even then,
Yeah.
it's not ideal because
Yeah.
I can't judge
Mm.
how much pressure to put on the pedal.
Yeah.
It's just everything is different. It's just so hard.
Mm. Mm.
So they're pretty standard deficits and pretty common for stroke survivors to experience. What's that like being around the family? Do you have a large family? Are you having trouble at home managing all of the tasks and the duties that you have?
So I live with my husband and our two children. So Daniel's 17 and Annabelle is 13. I'm really glad that they are older. I can't imagine going through this with young kids. Like it's, if I'm having my bed day, which is reasonably regularly, and I'm still pretty much in the same position when the kids get home from when they left. I struggle with hanging the washing out. I struggle with I don't cook very much now, which is not a bad thing, but um, uh, silly things like changing the bed, like the sheets, cleaning the bathroom, the toilet. I can maybe do one of those jobs a day, but if I do, that's pretty much me done for the entire day. I just I don't cope with anything. So what happens is my like my chest really sort of constricts, tightens, and breathing becomes incredibly difficult. And I just get really tired. Like it's kind of more than fatigue. It's really just this. It's that hit the wall. I actually can't do anymore. So the great thing about my family is they have kind of learnt to read the signs, and yeah, they do. We'll just say, just go and lie down. I had a really good day yesterday. We actually, as a family, managed to go to one of the malls, and then we went into the central city and did a bit of stuff in there. But I have been pretty tired today. I sort of wasn't too sure whether I was going to manage to talk to you today because I was like, oh my gosh, that might have been a wee bit much yesterday.
Yeah, there's a price to pay, isn't it? And there is a lag sometimes, and you've got to pay the price. I used to plan to have nothing to do after a big day. If I knew that I had a big day coming up, maybe we had to go to an event or something, I knew the following day there was nothing planned. We did nothing. It was a bonus if I felt well enough to go and attend to something else, but it was expected that I wouldn't be doing anything. And even now, sometimes it still does occur, crops up that I'm wasted the next day. I described the fatigue to my counselor yesterday as if you're driving a car and in order to start the motor, you need a battery. So you start the car and you benefit from the battery. I have a car that was built in 1900s and I'm cranking the motor at the front with the crank to get it started, and then like the effort is just that much different. If you've ever seen the old videos of people trying to crank a motor, that's the difference. It's pushing a button or a key to all that extra energy.
That's actually a really accurate description.
It's so much harder.
So when I saw the neurologist, which would be maybe a couple of months ago now, he said that because of the hole in my heart, he said I need to basically the only exercise they want me doing is basically a gentle walk, because if I push myself too much, there's the worry that a clot or something will pop through the hole again. So we live sort of right down at the start of a little valley, and it's a dead end. So I try every day to walk the dog up the hill. Well, it's not a big hill, up the valley road.
Yeah.
And there are days that when I've done that, that's pretty much it. That's me done, and I'll be back to bed.
I know exactly how you
So,
feel. It used to happen to me going from the couch to the toilet.
Oh, yeah.
How ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that task was one of the biggest tasks of my day for a long time. Thankfully, that eased off. And going for a walk is, I would have to say, Rachel, that's still a really good thing that you've gone for the walk, you've been out, you've done the exercise, and now you're understanding it's time to rest and recuperate. And it'll get better, but it is what it is for now, because you're very early on in the recovery phase. Just so
and
early.
I think also I realize now that I probably went back to too much work too soon, and that's probably also hindered my recovery in the last few months anyway. I sort of just I was pushing through when I shouldn't have been pushing through, but you do what you think you have to do at the time. But
you don't know. You don't know until you do it. And it's
Mm.
good that you know now, you know where your limit is, and you know that you have to ease your way to the next milestone, we'll call it, rather than try and push towards it. Just get there gently, and then reassess. It probably didn't hinder your ongoing recovery by pushing too early. You may have just put too much time and effort into something that wasn't going to get you supposed results, or was going to make you feel like you weren't capable. So now that you know that and it's out of the way, you can move forward with a little bit more. Well, I'm not sure what the word is. I don't know if it's accuracy, but with a little bit more opportunity, where you've got informed, a little more informed moving forward. So it's good that you worked that out, even though it was hard, maybe a hard lesson at the time. So are you on any medications? Did they give you any blood thinners or anything to keep that underlying potential of of another clot forming under control?
So I'm on blood thinners. I'm on blood pressure medication. I'm on cholesterol medication. I'm on something else. I can't think what it is. So I take quite a few bits and pieces. It's funny. One of the previous podcasts I listened to, you were talking to somebody about checking in with the doctors and making sure that the medication you're taking is that you actually need to be taking it. Because like the cholesterol, I can't remember who you were talking to, and they were like, I don't have high cholesterol. So I talked to my GP about that, and he was really happy with what I was on, and he said it's still very early days, and he said often what can happen is your cholesterol can become an issue after a stroke. So he feels comfortable at this stage that I stay on that for now. But so I've also because I wasn't coping very well with my mental health, they've also put me on some low dose antidepressants. I think they are making a difference, but I do also wonder if they contribute to some of my tiredness as well.
I think you might be right there.
Yeah.
Tell me about that mental health part, if you can. So when you say your mental health's been affected, how has it been affected? What are you aware of that has become an issue since the stroke? Or is this kind of mental health challenge that you're having now something that is a little bit of overflow from previous mental health challenges that you left unattended?
I think some of it is from before the stroke. It's mental health issues do run in my family. Specifically, my dad has a lot of mental health issues, or severe. But part of the problem was I'd sort of get stuck on something to do with my stroke, like I'm not going to get better, or and I would spiral into this real sort of negative mindset. And I would cry. I couldn't talk to anyone about my stroke without crying. And yeah, I've always been a fairly emotional person, but this was beyond a joke. This was just, and when I saw the neurologist, he just said to me, he said, we need to get you onto some antidepressants so that you can actually talk about this without crying. Because I wasn't necessarily upset, but I would just cry. So and there are days when everything just feels a bit too much and it's a bit overwhelming, and I think sometimes I feel like I can't see a way forward. And like I know that I'm early on in my journey, and one of the really great things about finding your podcasts, which I didn't find till a couple of months ago, is that hearing what's happening to me is common. We all experience things slightly differently, but it's, there are commonalities there for what's happening to me. Those things happen to other people.
Very common.
And I think it sort of, it makes it a little bit easier to accept, I guess. And like, because right at the start, when it all first happened, nobody could really tell me exactly what was going on, and the doctors didn't give me any information. And to be fair, I think initially I wouldn't have been able to process the information, and maybe that's why they don't give you lots of information when you're really, unwell. But now that I'm starting to understand a bit more about, where the hole is, how, it affects your heart and stuff. And I think with a bit more understanding, I'm a bit more accepting of the fact that, this has happened.
It's fair enough too. At 44, all of a sudden, there's a hole in your heart. You've had strokes. You've had strokes you weren't aware of that you've had. So it's fair enough that this thing is overwhelming, and it's going to cause a little bit of, adjustment, to put it mildly. And, where do you start to deal with all of this? And also you're feeling fatigued, and neurologically and cognitively, you're not where you remember yourself being literally a few months ago, so it's a shitstorm coming together real quick, and you've got to go, hang on a sec, I need space, I need time to process this. There's a lot going on with the crying. You've heard of pseudobulbar affect?
Yeah, well, only because you've talked about it with other people.
That's a big one, right? It's really common. People cry. In episode 200 which one was it? 211, I interviewed Will Perringwood. Will is the most impacted crier from a stroke that I've ever met. He cries all the time. He said that at his wedding, he dehydrated basically because of all the crying that he did. When his child was born, same thing. And it's not like him. He doesn't have that button. It's not he was never really a big crier, but it's something happens after the stroke that creates a condition that makes people emotions kind of take this roller coaster. I'm the same. I'm just imagining myself sometimes talking on stage, and I can see myself crying on stage when I'm presenting. And it's like, what do I do? Do I pretend it's not happening, or do I just let it happen and go with it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think personally, it's better to cry, give people a bit of an understanding of why you're crying. And for me, I just would say, well, there's nothing wrong. I'm not specifically crying because I'm upset or nothing's happened. I don't know what it is. I'm just crying. But the challenge with it is not that I'm doing it. It's how other people around me feel when I'm crying.
Yeah.
And I'm forever trying to manage them instead of me.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been finding a bit frustrating lately is often when I'm talking to people and, you know, they can obviously hear in my voice that I'm a bit flat and a bit low and not very well. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, but it's just, that's me at the moment, you know, like, and I get they don't really know what else to say, but it's just, there's nothing anyone can do. It is just time. And, you know, hopefully as it goes on, it does get a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, you know what they can do actually is they can become educated a little bit. And all they've got to do, for example, is listen to this episode with you. Your friends, if you go, you know, if you share the episode with them and say, hey guys, if you want to get an insight on what it's like to be me after stroke, have a listen to this.
Yeah. And I think one of the things a lot of people sort of in my family circle and friend circle is, when like at work, I don't have any like physical deficits in terms of my outward appearance. I still, you know, and so a lot of the time when I tell people, they just look at me and they go, no, you didn't. And I'm like, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's sort of sometimes quite hard as well. But it was funny, I was at school the other day and one of my colleagues was sitting not far from me and I was talking to somebody else who I hadn't seen for ages and filling them in on what had happened. And this other lady goes, yeah. She goes, no, you're definitely better. She goes, you don't sound nearly as vacant as you did when you first came back.
We call
like,
that
awesome.
a backhanded compliment. That's
yeah. But you know, it was said with love and care. It wasn't,
I get it.
You know, but it was fantastic. But it was also really nice to hear that you know, the people that I do see have noticed a little bit of an improvement in, you know,
that's so important.
Because before, well, about halfway through last year, I finished my postgraduate diploma at university in literacy. That's my sort of passion area for school. And my current school have been talking to me about wanting me to do my master's and stuff. And so next year, they've offered me the one day basically to be a research day and use it towards my master's if I want to. And I really want to, but I don't know that I can do that right now. So we'll wait and see. But like often when I'm talking to somebody, I will just forget what I'm saying and just stop sort of mid-sentence. And the other day in the kitchen, I caught myself just standing there and sort of staring around the kitchen. I had no idea what I'd been doing. It took quite a few minutes for me to realize that I'd been like washing the dishes and stuff. And so there's things like that sort of just, they really throw me when they happen because it's, you know,
unlike you.
Yeah. I think I do feel quite a great sense of loss from who I used to be. And because I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah. So you're dealing with your identity change as well. So you're dealing with medical conditions, you're dealing with physiological differences, with cognitive differences, with all these differences, and now your identity has been copping a blow, right? So it's a big one. The thing about identity is I think the reason why a lot of people experience the struggle with that is because they are very narrow in the way that they would describe themselves when you met them at a party. So if you said, hey, how you going? I'm Bill. And hi, I'm Rachel. And I say, oh, nice to meet you, Rachel. What do you do? If the person who answers that question says, oh, I work at a school, and that's it. And now they're not working at a school anymore. And then it's a struggle, because if that's all their identity is, then my gosh, then fair enough. It's all gone. Who am I now? So I think something that could be helpful around that is, when people are struggling with their identity, it's to understand that you can still be a teacher by going to school once a week instead of 5 days a week. You can still be a parent by making a cup of tea for the kids instead of a full meal. So you kind of change the parameters by which your identity was built on, and you soften them a little, or you broaden them. And then you say, I'm still a mum, and I'm a mum who has all these tasks that I do in a different way or a different capacity now, so that you don't miss out on the role of being a mum. I can still be a mum by giving advice, or I still be a mum by, I'm not sure what, but that's what I've found is people that are hard and fast in their identity, and then that changes, becomes a real big problem. In my book, there's a chapter about that, chapter 3, I think it is. And I call it like people who identify themselves as being empty deskers instead of empty nesters, So they have found themselves for 30 or 40 years at a desk, and now their desk has been vacated and they're no longer sitting in it, and they're no longer sitting. And it's okay, time to readjust the parameters on who you are and what you do and how you describe yourself to somebody who you've never met before at a party.
These last few weeks, like since I haven't been doing the other job as well, it's been really, I've really enjoyed it, because I actually find that I'm having time to do things that I actually enjoy doing. So listening to music, or to podcasts, or reading a book, and just making time for those things. And obviously, coming into summer, we've had some really lovely days in the last few weeks. We've also had some really cold days, but being able to be out, I don't do any gardening because that causes a wee bit too much not feeling great. So I am, I think, making the most of being at home.
Yeah, there is a real pleasure to that as well. Like, it's a weird part of stroke. I was at home probably most of the 2.5 years that I was unwell leading up to my brain surgery. And being at home and just doing things that you don't have time to do was a real bizarre benefit of being unwell. And I did benefit a lot from, meditation and catching up with people at lunch, and participating in tasks for the Stroke Foundation here in Australia. There was a lot of joy that came from it. I've attended some personal development courses. It's just, there was more time to be me and be myself. And it was strangely amazing. It couldn't have happened if I wasn't unwell.
Yeah.
It's all very familiar to me. Your story's really familiar. So your husband has had to step up a little bit by the sounds of things.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he's always been an active relaxer. So even when he's not working, he's always doing something. And yeah, he's been amazing. It would have been a real struggle if he, if we weren't together. I probably would have had to move him with my mum or something like that. He is definitely the glue that holds everything together. So very grateful for that.
Yeah. So what's one of the hardest things about stroke for you?
I think for me, it's having to slow down and just take things one step at a time, because I'm usually pretty busy and just, you know, yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is just, I don't know that patience is the right word, because I can be a patient person, but just, yeah, learning to say no, because I'm, you know, pretty good at saying, yeah, I'll do that. And now I'm just like, actually, no, I can't do that. So, yeah.
So slowing down and saying no, do people still expect you to say yes? Do you find that, or has it been pretty good?
Yeah. So, no, there's probably one family member in particular who would still like me to just drop everything and go. Yeah. But I'm getting better at, yeah, just saying no, or just not giving lots of options, and just saying, this is what's going to happen and this is when it's going to happen. And that way I can plan for, you know, what I need for me. Yeah, I've become a lot better at putting myself first, which is, you know, I'm a real people pleaser. So yeah, I used to literally do anything to keep everyone happy. I think that stems back to when my parents separated many years ago. Was always trying to keep people happy, and I just continued as I got older. And now it's trying to make sure that I'm happy and functioning the best I can at that particular time, and looking after my children and my husband when I can manage it.
What has stroke taught you?
I think it's taught me to be a lot more understanding, and to, I think, look at things from lots of different angles. You know, I think I've always been good at problem solving, but I think I'm probably better now at sort of at dealing with whatever comes, and sort of maybe not panicking as much.
Stroke is one big problem-solving journey, isn't it? Stroke recovery, it's really what it is.
Yeah, and yeah, so I think it's just really sort of, looking at things quite differently to what I used to.
Yeah.
What's important.
There's probably a lot of people listening who have just found the podcast or just early on in their recovery journey. And you're a little more experienced than them, perhaps. So what would you like to tell other people that are listening?
Just take it easy. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and do what you can do, and don't worry about what you don't get done that day, because it will likely still be there the next day. And just be kind to yourself. Yeah. And ask lots of questions.
Yeah. Be kind to yourself is a good one. I like that one, because often we can be hard on ourselves, especially, well, I'm going to just use the term high achievers, or people who have, who are always go, 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 who never say no and all that kind of stuff, and then feel bad that they can't do what they used to do. And then if you're hard on yourself because you can't do this, it's counterproductive, because really what you want to be is, you want to be kind to yourself so that you're being productive when you've let things go. So it's not unproductive to not do something when you're recovering from stroke. It's actually very productive, because what you're doing is allowing for energy not to be wasted. You're allowing for recovery to occur. You're allowing for things to settle down, and for your cognitive function to continue to improve. So resting and sitting on your butt and doing nothing for 45 minutes or an hour is actually really productive because it's recharging your battery.
Yeah.
Where you were perhaps, heading towards an empty battery. So being kind to yourself so that you can do things that you previously would have avoided doing or thought that it was not for you to do is definitely, you have to flip it over and you have to see it the other way.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me on the podcast. I wish you well with all of your upcoming procedures and everything that you've got to get through. I know you'll overcome it, and you look back in 12 months' time from now and you won't believe how far you've come.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you reaching out. Even though you're going through the tough times and it's difficult, reaching out and sharing your story in the hope that it's going to help other people. It's still amazing to me every time I interview somebody who's going through a tough time, who feels that the best thing they could do is jump on the podcast and share their story in the hope that it'll help somebody else.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the podcast, because until I found them, I was really struggling. And it was just so good to hear, similar experiences, very different, but just, those similar experiences.
Thanks for being my guest.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share about your stroke experience, come and join me on the show. The interviews are not scripted. You do not have to plan for them. All you need to do to qualify is be a stroke survivor who wants to share your story in the hope that it will help somebody else who's going through something similar. If you are a researcher who wants to share the findings of a recent study, or you're looking to recruit people into studies, you may also wish to reach out and be a guest on my show. If you have a commercial product that you would like to promote that is related to supporting stroke survivors to recover, there is also a path for you to join me on a sponsored episode of the show. Just go to recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, fill out the form explaining briefly which category you belong to, and I will respond with more details about how we can connect via Zoom. Remember, grab a copy of Chapter 1 of the book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Has Become the Best Thing That Happened. Just visit recoveryafterstroke.com/book. 150 other people have already done that. Take a look around and discover what the book is all about. Click the download free chapter button and you will receive it in your email. As always, to learn more about my guests, including the links to their social media and other pages, and to download a full transcript of the entire interview, please go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. Thanks again for being here and listening. I really appreciate you. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy quality, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.